What is up, my friends? We're back again for some more, missed my door handle, some more Mustang content and educational content as well. I'm getting ready to leave my apartment, going back home for winter, well, for Christmas break. But before I left, I wanted to give you guys this one more video and a little bit more information about engines in the car world in general. So let's get into it. Hold on. First, I gotta grab the old lawn chair and shut the door. So, I was just, been brainstorming, racking the old noggin about what I should do next. And I'm pretty limited right now because I don't have access to any good editing, anything. I'm not real great with taking videos, that kind of stuff. But I decided I was going to do just a real brief video about engine layout. V6, inline 6, V8, V12, W, whatever. There's a whole bunch of them. Push rod versus overhead cam. There's a whole lot of junk and lingo when it comes to the car world. So I'm going to try and make this a little clearer. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, the difference between a V-shape inline, like a V6 or a V8, versus an inline. So an inline engine has all the pistons, all these cylinders in a line. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, this creates a lot more torque. Not as high of a horsepower range, but they're very torquey engines. Think of Ford's 300 inline 6, very famous engine. Even the Dodge, the Cummins, they're inline 6s, very torquey engines. Don't always make crazy horsepower, but incredibly torquey engines. Another advantage of the inline 6 is there's just less parts. In a V-shape engine, you've got to have 2 of everything. In an inline engine, you just have one right there. You have one cam, one crank. Well, you always have one crank, I think. You always have one cam, one timing chain, one set of push rods. That's it. Yeah, so that's your inline 6. They're all in a row. Some famous vehicles that have this. Inline 6 shows up in the Supra in the form of the 2JZ and 1JZ. Ford's 300 inline 6 shows up in a lot of their pickup trucks throughout the years. They stopped doing it, I believe, in the 90s. I'm kind of blanking on anything else right now that has an inline 6, but they're known for their reliability and durability, but they don't have as high of horsepower. So yeah, I believe that's everything I got for you guys on an inline engine. They do come in multiple variations, such as inline. There's an inline 3, inline 4, inline 5, 6. There's probably an inline 8 out there, maybe even a 7. I've never heard of one, but there's probably one out there. They're not as versatile, but they do make, since they're in a line, they have more room on either side of the engine for things like turbos, but they have less room in the front because they are always so much longer. So if you're wanting to put, say, a Pro Charger system that utilizes the front end of your engine, you may not want to be using that on an inline. You may want to do that on a V engine. But inlines, the pros are that they have good torque, they're usually pretty simple, and they have a lot of room on either side since they're so narrow. But let's get into the V-style engine. So the V-style engine, it's one you see more often in higher cylinder numbers. The V6, V8, V10, V12, and they're called a V because their cylinders are aligned in a V shape, like this. This is an inline. Oh, my fingers are cramping. Inline, V. So keep that in mind. They're wide. They don't have a lot of room on either side for things like turbos, but they're usually shorter. See, an inline is about that long in this sense, and a V6 would be like this. So V6, you have a lot more room in the front of the engine for any kind of aftermarket, say your Pro Charger kits. You want to do some cool stuff to the front. Bam, right there. Your V-style engine is perfect because they're very short. They're much wider, much more difficult to get things on the sides, like a twin turbo kit. You can do it. It's very possible. It's not that hard, but it is a lot more difficult when comparing it to an inline engine, like an inline 6. I have a V6. I can tell you right now, I've got a heck of a lot more room in front than I do on either side. Ooh, that's a 5.3 straight pipe. Yeah, or 5.7. That's another good point, is that in an inline there's one of everything. I said that earlier, but there's one exhaust manifold. So their sound is usually a lot more smooth. It's not as choppy because their exhaust is only coming through one pipe. Now, you compare that to a V engine, like say a V8, there's two exhaust pipes coming down, and they come down, and then they meet. Sometimes they don't, but they usually do. And even if they don't, there's still two different exhaust manifolds that are putting out their exhaust, which comes in pulses. So it sounds, instead of it being a smooth, one note where it's just, I'm not going to make the noise, it's going to sound weird. Instead of just one long continuous thing coming from one long manifold, it's one coming from either side, either side, either side, either side. So it's a lot more choppy, but a lot more aggressive. And some people like it and some people don't. Just my take on it. I prefer the V8 sound, but the Inline 6 also sounds pretty mint. Back to it, there's V6, which I have. A V8 is 4 on either side. A V6 is 3 on either side. V10 has 5. V12 has 6. So that's pretty much all I got for you on the V engine. They're pros. They have a lot of room on the front. They have a lot higher horsepower in comparison to torque. Inlines have more torque but less horsepower. V engines are the opposite, with better horsepower minus torque. So take that for what you will. There's also W engines, which I'm not going to get into because I honestly don't thoroughly understand them and I don't want to confuse you guys. But some famous cars that have them are things like the Bugatti, I believe, has a W16 engine, which is insane. A W6, that is 16 cylinders, folks. That is literally double what the Ford Mustang GT has. That's incredible. But we're not going to get into that. I am going to brush over some other things right now. So there's one other thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and that is a overhead cam versus a pushrod. So a pushrod engine, so say this is your engine, a pushrod would have the... I'm not going to use my hands for any more of this. I'm going to set you on my boot, though. Maybe. Yeah. So a V-style engine looks like this, right? V-style engine is like this. So the crank, if this were a pushrod, there would be your crank and then your cam. They have one cam right here in the block. And then you have a pushrod that comes up here, which manipulates your rocker arms, which does your valves. So you have a crank, a cam, push rods that push up into your valves, or into your rocker arms, which then activate your valves. Now, they're very simple. The LS platform is pushrod because it is simple. You have one cam to take care of everything. Now, the downsides to this, while they are simple, those push rods they're pretty thin, so they can bend. There's a lot more parts involved throughout the engine. There's less overall, but there's more parts throughout the engine. But they're very simple. They're a much simpler engine. Then you have overhead cam, which that means that here's your heads. See here's your heads. You have a cam here and a cam, or sometimes two cams here and two cams there. That would be called a dual overhead cam. Think the Ford Mustang Cobra, the 0304 Cobra had overhead cams. A lot of engines nowadays have overhead cams simply because they're more advanced, and everything is up in here. You don't have to worry about having your crank, or you don't have to worry about your cam being all the way down here, because your cams are up here in your heads. Much simpler to just pull off one head, do your work there, and put it back on without having to worry about push rods. So, but there are more parts. You are having to worry about more than one more than one cam, and that does play into that. One pro, going back to the push rod, one pro to the push rod is that while there's only one. So if you're going to change out a cam, you only have to pay for one camshaft. Boom, bang, bang, boom, it's in there. However, to get to it, you have to pull off your front timing cover, and a lot of times you may even have to pull out the engine because it has to come out the front of the engine. Okay, I can't do it anymore. You have to pull out the front of the engine, which sometimes interacts with your radiator, your front clip. So a lot of times, or sometimes, you may have to even take it out. Now, good thing or bad thing, that's up to the people who are buying the engine. Just like everything else in the car world, it's up to personal preference. So, we're just going to go over everything again. Inline means they're all in a row. V means they're in a V shape. Push rods, one cam in the block, and it uses push rods to activate the valves. And a overhead cam has cams in the heads that turn and activate the rocker arms, therefore interacting with your valves. So that's all I got for you guys today. If I said something you don't agree with or you'd like, have any suggestions, hit me up in the comments. Hope you guys have a great day. Stay safe. Be careful. I said that multiple times. Have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you guys later.